Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Only Podcast. My name is Chris Vanini, your host, as always, and joined, as always, by Joe Toohey, the OnlyColors.com managing editor. And apologies for being off for the past 2 weeks now. We've had a lot of stuff come up in each of our lives, both professionally and academically and personally. So a lot of stuff came up. We weren't able to get together to do one of these, but now we are. And safe to say, a whole lot has happened since then. Joe, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm actually getting over a couple different colds, so I'm sounding healthier than I have probably since the 7th. Anyways,
That's good. Yeah, I when it got cold, I always have trouble with the dry air, but hasn't been. I was actually right before we got on here. I was just thinking. I was outside with the dogs, and I was like, we haven't gotten like any snow, and like I get like cold's cold, and I don't hate that it hasn't been a terrible winter, but part of me kind of wishes we had one of those big snow days like they got in the Northeast last week. You know, we're just especially with the
everything
dogs.
shuts down, and
Well, like our dogs, they love it, and one of our dogs is always just rolling, and he hasn't really gotten that this year. And I was actually just thinking about that before we came out in here. But so I mean, like if it's gonna be cold, at least like get some snow out there, you know, because otherwise it just kind of turns into mud, and that's the worst possible thing you can have when you have dogs.
yeah, and it's just kind of ugly looking, anyways. So
Yeah.
I'm with you.
So yeah, I mean, 2 weeks ago I couldn't do it because I was at I was in San Antonio for the AFCA coaches convention, meeting a lot of people for my work with Coaching Search, and that was a good time. I'd never been to San Antonio before. Uh, cool city. Have you ever been there?
Yeah, actually, I have some family that's in
Oh,
San Antonio. I've been there a number of times.
there you go.
The Mexican food is incredible. I mean,
Right.
it just like fast food places that seem like they should be terrible are like some of the best Mexican food I've ever had
And I
down in
and
that
yeah, and
area.
I did have a Whataburger for the first time. I never had it because obviously it's not up here, so it was pretty good, pretty good. But craziest thing from that trip on my last day, I saved a stray dog. Weird story. So it's at the convention center. The convention's going on, and I go out. I hadn't eaten all day, and I was just going to run out to grab some McDonald's or something real quick outside the convention center. So I get to a cross section downtown, and I see a dog across the street, and I'm like, oh, it must off leash. I'm like, oh, it must be somebody's dog walking off leash. You know, it was like peeing on a lamppost or something. So I was watching it. Then kind of everybody walks by. I'm like, oh, it must be nobody's dog. Maybe it like lives in one of the shops around here, and kind of just started wandering off. So I'm like, I'm gonna follow this guy because my wife works for the Humane Society here, and we're big dog people. So I was like, I want to make sure this dog's okay. And went over to about a puddle and started drinking, so I could tell it was thirsty. And I was able to. It was a very nice dog, sweet dog, and was able to get to come up to me once we had some water and food. And some other lady who didn't speak very good English came to help me. She had a bottle of water, and we start we're giving it some water and trying to figure out if it's anybody's dog. Doesn't look like it's anybody's, and so we're like, okay, well, we got to do something about this. Neither of us have a car. I'm on foot. I'm from out of town. I'm like, so I'm like, what should we do with this? And I call my wife. She's like, call like a vet or a local vet or animal control. I was like, I don't know where anything is here. So I call a vet. I just like Google search a vet on my phone. I call a vet. They go, well, we can't come get it. I was like, they said, call animal control. So I says, all right, call animal control. And they say, we can't give you a time that we'll be able to come out there and get it. And I was like, well, I can't hold on to this dog. For one, I'm not from here. I got to get back to doing my thing. And like, it's downtown. I don't want this dog, you know, getting hit by a car. It had gone up to some horses that were pulling a carriage, like just staring at him. I was trying to back it away from the horses. And I was like, what are we going to do here? So the lady says, let's find a policeman and see if he can help us. So we go down, we find up like a block down, we find a policeman, and also we didn't have any leashes or anything. Dog didn't have any tags or anything, so we wanted to give it to animal control, see if they could see if it had a chip or something. I didn't know what to use this dog with. Eventually, I figured out to use my lanyard that I have my name tag on it to pull this dog. So we go to the cop. We go, we found this dog. What should we do with it? Can you take it to animal control or something? And he says that it apparently had been wandering around for 2 days, like downtown. Apparently, nobody was doing anything about it. So I was like, what the hell? And he didn't.
Right.
And he didn't seem to care. So I was like, well, now what do we do? And so the lady says, well, let's take it down. There's a police station about 2 blocks down. So we get it in there. They go, hey, we just found this dog. Is there any way you can just hold it until animal control can go get it or something? The guy's not really sure. I'm like, look, it's a really sweet dog. It's a really nice dog. And he's like, animal control usually only comes out if it's a vicious dog, like in danger. I was like, okay, well, I understand that, but this guy's a really sweet dog. He's been wandering around apparently for 2 days. Can someone do something? He calls in the back. I guess they have a cage. Some guy comes out and says they have a cage back there with some food. So he says they'll take him, and then animal control will come get him. So he went there, and my wife later told me that I guess San Antonio animal control is no kill. So hopefully he either had a home and had a chip and got a new home, or got adopted or something, because he was a really sweet dog for being downtown in a city like that. Like very friendly. He must have had an owner or something, because he was, like I said, well behaved. But yeah, so that was my lasting impression of my trip to the coaches convention. I just thought that was
yeah, an unironic Spartan's will on that one.
Or a Spartan dog, or
oh yeah, there you go. Now you're talking.
Yeah. So, but yeah, San Antonio. I went to San Diego a year ago, and I got a very similar vibe in between San Antonio and San Diego, in that it's a big city, but you can tell it's like the number 3 city in that state. Like it's not Houston, right, and it's not Dallas, and like San Diego is not LA, it's not San Francisco. It's got everything you could want, but it just kind of feels you can tell it's like the number 3. So, but I went down on the Riverwalk when I had a chance, and very nice city. So, recommend if anybody heads out that way. And you've obviously been there, so.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're going to pick a time, even though it hasn't been horrible here, January is definitely the time to be in southern Texas. So.
Yeah. So what have you been doing over the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, so I'm in the process of applying to business schools right now. So I was just in Pittsburgh, visiting Carnegie Mellon, and I interviewed at Michigan State last week as well. So I'm also interviewing at Wisconsin and University of Rochester in New York.
Wisconsin.
So, yeah, I could end up at the real rival. Moving from Ann Arbor anyway.
Yeah, if you go from Ann Arbor to Madison, dude, you're like totally infiltrating from the inside. That's fun.
Yeah, I mean, have to be behind enemy lines one way or another. So
yeah, so thanks guys for sticking with us. I know the last couple weeks, like I said, we had a lot of stuff going on, couldn't really get together, but we like doing this. I hope you guys like listening to it. That's why we do it. So, but yeah, as for MSU sports, the reason why we're here talking, since we last recorded this, Spartans whooped on Penn State on the road, then had 3 straight losses to Iowa, Wisconsin, Nebraska, before a rebound win against Maryland in the lime green. So had we recorded this a week ago, I think the take on the basketball team would be a lot more negative than it is coming out of that Maryland win. A lot's happened. Denzel Valentine's back, but Tum Tum Nairn is out with the plantar fasciitis. Joe, as you kind of look at this team, this recent stretch, they bounced back, but what's your take on this team right now? Where they at?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in general. So, to me, the 2 losses to Wisconsin and Nebraska are probably a little bit less terrible than they probably seem on their face, just because they were both 1-point losses. those losses happened where MSU had a chance to actually win the game on the very last shot of the game.
Yeah.
Had a couple calls or a couple shots gone differently, MSU could be sitting at 2 losses in conference, and it'd be a whole different tune. The good news here is that the non-conference schedule was or resume was so good that as long as MSU gets to probably 500 in conference, they're in the tournament.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, ultimately, I just think that the defense has been the major issue. They've taken a big tumble down the KenPom rankings defensively, and it seemed like there was not only the disaster in terms of fouling against Wisconsin, but then there was sort of a weird overreaction against Nebraska, and then sort of a recalibration of what is going on in general. I mean, I think my biggest takeaway over the last 3 weeks or so is that I no longer understand what a foul is. I mean,
Yeah.
I think as a basketball fan in previous years, like, I may or may not agree with calls, but I think I had a pretty firm understanding of what a foul was. Anymore, I just don't know. I mean, there are times when hand checks get called. There are times when they don't get called. There's times when wrestling in the post gets called. There's times when that doesn't get called. And it just seems like a real problem, not only for MSU basketball in some sense, because it's always been a physical defensive style that Izzo has employed, but then also for the game as a whole, it just seems like watching basketball is college basketball to some degree has gotten harder to watch in general. But
Very much.
so I hit on probably a dozen sub points relatively poorly quickly in there. So I don't know where you want to head, what direction you'd like to head there. But
there were Tuesday night, LSU Georgia. There were 55 fouls in that game. Now, part of that was intentional fouling at the end, but 55 fouls. There were 30. I think one of the teams had 33 on their own. That's just ridiculous. And,
well, yeah, I mean, the stat that stood out to me about the Wisconsin game was that Wisconsin hit 8 more free throws than field goals. Right? I mean, that's wild. It's and a lot of that was deserved. I mean, I think that MSU's defense was overly aggressive in a lot of cases, but I mean, there were also times where I thought that there were calls that shouldn't have happened, or the defense didn't gain any clear advantage from a guy having his hand on a guy, right?
Yeah, and
where it could have been a play-on situation. So
right, and like you said, I mean, it's the consistency. Yeah, I've seen a lot of pieces nationally, actually, from writers who think the rules are doing a good job. I just think with the way MSU plays, though, it really forces the officials. I think officials have a very, very difficult time with MSU games, just in how they want to do it, because do you call those fouls early on and kind of set the tone, or do you not? And just like you said, to me, it just comes down to just inconsistency. You get that little hand checks at the top, but then you get guys banging down low and they're not called. It's just it's very difficult, I think, to officiate an MSU game. And like you said, MSU's defense, it's been weird. They've been overall, it has been good, it has been bad. They're 43rd in adjusted efficiency in KenPom, but they're number 3 in effective field goal percentage. The problem is they're number 256 in free throw rate. So when they don't foul, their defense is very good. But the problem is they keep fouling. And they're also not forcing any turnovers. They're almost at the bottom of the country in that, which is weird because, I mean, that might come down to the fouling thing too. More fouls getting called than maybe. But, yeah, been very weird defense. I mean, like Nebraska putting up 72, Wisconsin 76, although that was a lot of free throws, and Iowa, blew them away twice, but that's a good team. But
so
yeah.
I think, so there's a couple things in there. So I agree with what you're saying in terms of fouling, and I do think that MSU's fouling too much. Now, what I'll say is when it comes to the turnover rate defensively, that's always been a little bit of an Izzo hallmark is a low defensive turnover percentage. However, but I think what the issue is this year, at least, is that there isn't a guy like a Brandon Dawson who would jump into passing lanes and kind of create turnovers on his own to some degree. Who, just off the top of your head, I mean, who's the standout perimeter defender on this team?
I mean,
it's probably
steal rate here.
Tum.
Yeah, I mean, well,
right. I mean, just even not looking at the stats necessarily,
well,
but
I'm just glancing at the stats, but I mean,
right.
Valentine leads the team with 2.0 steal rate among regulars. Marvin Clark's at 2.5, but we haven't seen him in a while. Nairn's only at 1.0, so I mean, MSU normally doesn't get a lot of turnovers on Izzo, but it's never been this low. Like they're 348th out of 350 something teams. Last year they were 312th. Year before 215. Year before 215. Year before 213. So they've been low, but this
right.
Low,
well, and
you don't know.
And the sort of absolute difference in turnover percentage is at 13.7%. And then in previous years, you'd be in the 200s at about 16%. So that's, 3% of possessions is, basically a possession per game that could have made a difference against Wisconsin or against Nebraska. But ultimately, I mean, that doesn't bother me too much because of just how good that this team has been in terms of field goal percentage defense. And that's the basic trade-off that right. Izzo seems to be trying to make. But yeah, I think your initial assessment is right. I think that basically whether or not MSU fouls and can still play some good defense is really what's going to be the X factor for this defense going forward. And to me, it seemed like Nebraska got a lot of really easy looks in the paint because MSU was so concerned about fouling the game after that Wisconsin game. There's that weird report that MSU is now towel drill U instead of war drill U, where guys are holding towels above their head because they're trying not to hand check guys. So, I think that there was a little bit of an overreaction by the team overall. I don't know what else you can say about that. But that once the Maryland game kind of came around, they had gotten a little bit better calibrated and seemed to come out with more energy as well, which was helpful. But
yeah, I mean, it's just been, we keep talking about the free throws, and like we said, that's the difference in the defense right now. They're third in effective field goal percentage defense, but they can't stop fouling. The good part of that is that they've had the depth to withstand that a bit when guys get in foul trouble. They do have bodies to go in. And actually, as of a couple weeks ago, this was something I was going to talk about, but it kind of hasn't the case in the last couple of games. But Izzo has really cut down on that rotation in the past week, especially the Iowa game. Both the Iowa losses, I think they played something like 12 or 13 guys in the first halves of those games. And as they were kind of getting blown out in that half, the game against, I think the second one at home against Iowa, when Forbes got his second foul on that bad charge call that should have been a block, and then he sat for the rest of the entire half while Iowa kept adding to that lead. And I think Iowa was really good and probably would have won anyway. But I think the auto bench there and the just throwing everybody in there, not getting any sort of semblance of a rotation was not a good idea by Izzo. But the last two games, the Nebraska game, even though they lost that, but I think they generally kind of had it down to, I think 8 guys played in the first half against Nebraska, so that he seemed to cut it down a little bit, which I think is what they needed to do, and I think that was good for the Maryland game because, we talked about how this team is 12, 13 players deep, but at some point you got to figure out who your top guys are. Alvin Ellis, I know we played against Maryland, but like he's actually got a higher he plays more minutes or more. He uses more possessions than Bryn Forbes does. Looking at Ken Palm here, but him getting time, Wallenman getting time. Those are guys that really shouldn't only be getting in it. I think if there's a lot of foul trouble, and although I know Ellis played against Maryland, it seems like Izzo is a little more tightening that up a bit. Do you think?
Yeah, and definitely he is. And I've been a little, uh, I've been critical. I don't know if necessarily in the blog, but probably from the Twitter account of his choices in shortening that rotation as well. I mean, Colby Wallenman against Wisconsin, I believe, had an atrocious stretch of time where his plus minus was -13. Wisconsin went on a 13-point run while Wallenman was in the game, and
and that was right after
and
I think an auto bench by Forbes. Was that the one at the end of the first half? Forbes got his second foul.
Yes.
Then Wisconsin went right out. I think Wallenman came in too, and they had a line right there to end the first half.
Or something like that, yeah. And so the thing that was confusing to me about that was that I think Kenny Goins played virtually not at all against Wisconsin, which was confusing. So it's the way that the rotation has been shortened has been confusing to me. Now, it's been in some ways, if the goal was to shorten the rotation, Tum Tum's injury, his plantar fasciitis, has been somewhat helpful in that regard because there's fewer guys that can play. Now the rotation at that point is down to maybe 13 guys because there's 12 scholarship guys plus Wallenman plus Goins at this point. So it's been interesting to see sort of how that's played out. It seems like there's almost more depth among the front court just because of the emergence of Kenny Goins at this point than there is in the backcourt because there's really no point guard other than Tum Tum Nairn, although McQuaid has sort of taken on a little bit of that role, and then obviously Valentine has been distributing a lot. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the rotation continues to shorten. I liked seeing Davis in the starting lineup. He actually played fewer minutes than Kenny Goins did against Maryland, which was interesting. But the other thing I think is a big plot, or has really emerged over the last 3 weeks, has been the emergence of Matt Costello. I mean, I think he has really blossomed as a player in a number of ways. And you were always on the Matt Costello train from back when he was a freshman, even.
He always had. I mean, he had the skill. He'd make one mistake and get pulled. And I think we talked. I don't know if we talked about it before or not, but I mean, that was. He always was kind of a little, sometimes afraid to make a mistake, or if he did get aggressive and he did make a mistake, he'd get pulled. And I think when Valentine went out, Costello really became one of the top scoring options for them, and they had to kind of play more in and out. And at Maryland, I mean, he's battling an ankle injury, I think, right now, and have a heck of a game there against Maryland. I think when he hugged Izzo there at the end of that game, I was thinking about that afterward, and like I said, Izzo is very, very hard on his big men, and like I said, if they make a mistake, they get pulled out, and not a lot of guys, or some guys can't take it. Some of the big guys can't really take it, and either never really kind of get going or leave the program or something. Costello stuck with it, and I think that's part of what that hug was there. He was able to battle through it and kind of is starting to see some of those rewards now. But I mean, he's had that ability there. I don't think he's added some sort of skill that he didn't have before. I think he's just playing with more confidence, and he's starting to hit more of those shots inside, maybe those bunnies that he maybe seemed to miss earlier in his career. And
well, I think there have been a number of skills that I've noticed from him that were there but weren't. He didn't differentiate himself from your average Big Ten big man previously, which is, number one, he is absolutely terrific in the pick and roll. I mean, the pick and roll with Valentine and Costello is.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean he was very good with that with Gary Harris last year. That was something that stuck out. I remember the two of them, or 2 years ago. I'm sorry, 2 years ago, especially when they were in New York when they went to Madison Square, and they did a lot of pick and roll with Costello and Harris. They seemed to. Might have been late in the season, I think, but I mean, he's had that a bit. He can run the floor, and he's done that before. And now he, like you said with Valentine, he's doing that more.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, to me though, the consistency of being able to do that possession by possession,
right?
They've gone to that pick and roll play with the two of them at the end of games. in many consecutive possessions. So I mean, I think that that's been impressive. I think that he's really improved his post game. I think he always had a little bit of a post game, but I think it's actually a true weapon now. He's still not Derek Nix necessarily, but he, you can really dump the ball down in the post to him if necessary, or if the matchup's favorable. And then the other thing is that his rebounding has really improved. And we knew that there was going to be a little bit of a void with Dawson leaving in terms of rebounding. And, so far this year, Costello in Big Ten play is the top offensive rebounder in terms of offensive rebounding percentage, and the second best defensive rebounder in terms of defensive rebounding percentage.
Yeah.
So I've been impressed. I really think that Costello's come along pretty significantly, and that's an awesome sign for this team going forward, despite the losses and kind of being out of the Big Ten picture for a regular season title at this point.
And it takes a little bit of pressure off Deonte Davis too, who I know he was kind of a point of contention among fans for a little bit. He can block the shots, he can dunk, but he struggled a bit on defense. He maybe was a little bit weak at times rebounding the ball. But if he doesn't have to be that number one guy, and Costello can, I think that'll help him along the way too.
Well, and one thing that I've noticed about Deonte Davis, and I think that probably defenses have noticed this too, is that when he is trying to finish over a defender, he has no left hand yet. So if he's on the left block and is finishing over his right shoulder, he should be going up with his left hand and is not doing that yet. So I think that you've seen that a little bit. He had a little bit of a tough game against Maryland. So that'll be interesting to see how he sort of progresses there. But yeah, I mean, obviously he's still got a ton of potential, and I like the idea of Costello and Davis on the floor together, because it seems like there's almost certainly a mismatch somewhere there. And I think that they kind of tried that with Schilling at the 4 as well. I think the idea was that Schilling's lateral quickness was going to allow him to defend the 4 a little bit better than maybe Davis or Costello could.
Yeah, Schilling can defend the pick and rolls up top, or the ball screens up top, I think, pretty good. Like you said, that lateral quickness. That's the floor.
Yeah, so I mean, despite the fact that since we last talked, this team is 2-3, I think that there are some reasons for optimism just generally with the way that some guys have progressed. Be that Brent Forbes continuing to assert himself in big ways. His 25 points against Maryland was huge, and Costello's emergence. And then even Aaron Harris. I mean, Harris had a bad game against Maryland, but overall, I think that he's gotten a lot more natural in terms of flow of the game and defending in such a way that is sort of a positive in the defense, the defensive scheme overall.
He looks more he looks more confident and comfortable out there. I think it took a bit of time for him to get game shape for how MSU likes to run things, and he's been a good third option, scoring option, or fourth now that Valentine is back. And how do you think Valentine's looked since he got back?
So I thought in the first few games he looked a little tentative. It seemed like he kind of just wanted to shoot threes and not drive the lane quite as much. I don't know if he just needed to kind of build up that confidence to some degree. But I thought that he looked significantly better against Maryland, just in terms of his game feel. And knowing a little bit of when to assert himself. I thought that he was trying to do a little too much at times at the end of games in really the last in the last 3 or 4 games, where sort of the beauty of MSU's offense at this point is sharing the ball and finding open guys using their passing ability in general. And so when that's the case, the sort of hero ball idea, which is more or less always a bad idea anyways, is an especially bad idea. And you can make a good argument that Denzel Valentine is one of the few guys in the country that you should be comfortable with playing hero ball. But I
mean, he's still hitting 40% from 3, which is pretty good.
In some ways, though, I think that Valentine's shooting percentages are a little bit of a function of his ability to understand what shots are good shots in a lot of cases.
Right.
And And so when he's shooting 2 for 8 from 3 against Maryland, or I know he didn't have great games against Wisconsin and Nebraska. It just it's a little bit of a concern, but I'm not overly concerned about it. This team still leads the country in assists per field goal made.
Right.
And I don't think that the offense in general is the problem, right? I think the offense has been pretty solid.
Right, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, I mean, they're number one, 71% of field goal makes, have an assist. They're number 10 offensively in adjusted offensive efficiency, and a lot of that is because of the assist. They're pretty good rebounding up there. Number 21, they're generally not turning the ball over unless it's against Iowa. But as we kind of look at these, as we look back at the 4 losses over the past month for them, I think looking back at Iowa, those lower losses that are a lot more understandable now compared to when it was MSU ranked number 1 in Iowa, undefeated, and MSU got ran out of the gym. I think Iowa's a really, really good team. I think looks like they're up to number 2 in KenPom. That's a damn good team, deep team, veteran team, and MSU couldn't handle them home or away. And look at that. And I think the Wisconsin game, always tough to play at the Kohl Center. You look at how the foul situation went, and one that gets away from them, one that they held a 4-point lead in the final seconds. I mean, Aaron Harris steps out of bounds. There's a 3. They stepped out of bounds. They give up the bucket. So I mean, it's like they gave that game away. Really, they did. And then Nebraska was just a bad one. Laid a clunker. And
a little bit of a bad effort. Yeah,
and they still had a shot, a good look at the end to win it. So a couple bounces go the other way, and MSU sitting here at 19-2, and you never know. But they're 4-4 in the Big Ten, likely out of the picture already. Iowa's undefeated in the Big Ten, having already swept MSU and Purdue. That's a real good team. So as we look at the next stretch here for MSU, they played at Northwestern on Thursday. That's a team that's gotten a lot better under Chris Collins. KenPom predicts a 4-point game, so it might be a battle. Then Rutgers at home, and then they travel to Michigan and travel to Purdue. So 3 of these next 4 are on the road. 2 of them are not favored to win. So what are you kind of looking for this next stretch here? If they go 2-2, are they? I mean, what? I guess kind of depends how things go. But what do you think about this next stretch here?
Yeah, I mean, so KJ had a tweet that sort of put things in perspective to some degree, which is, make sure the goals for the rest of the season at this point are stay healthy, make sure you get in the tournament, and try to beat your rivals. So. Yeah, I mean, to me, the biggest game in that stretch is the Michigan game. And going 2-2 is probably fine, just because the back end of the schedule is a little bit easier with home game against Penn State, another game against Rutgers. You figure you get to 10-8 in conference or something like that, and you're in good shape for the tournament. But yeah, I mean, that Northwestern game I think is going to be very interesting, because being on the road will be an interesting test for this defense at this point, given how much they've struggled at times against inferior competition. So that's what I'm going to be watching against Northwestern for is just defensive quality. If they can sort of continue to do a good job of not fouling in some situations while playing good defense, they should blow out Rutgers, just based on how truly terrible Rutgers is. Although Rutgers gave Michigan a little bit of a fight tonight. And then I'm really interested to see how Karis LeVert ends up looking for Michigan in that game.
Yeah, he should be back soon. He's been out, but it sounds like he's going to be back pretty soon. Although, I mean, Michigan struggled with Rutgers tonight as of this recording, but
right,
they're an interesting team, Michigan. They beat Maryland, but other than that, I'm trying to think of. I mean, their Big Ten wins otherwise are Penn State, Minnesota, Nebraska, Rutgers. and they lost at Iowa, and they lost at Purdue. So kind of what you expected this from them at this point.
Well, and what's going to be interesting about that matchup, and if we can record next week, I'm sure we'll talk about it more. But it's a little bit of a classic Izzo Beeline affair because Michigan's sporting all of these perimeter players that can shoot the ball, but they don't have a lot of size. Whereas MSU could roll out a lineup that involves both Deonta Davis and Matt Costello.
Yeah, I would have to imagine they go with a different lineup against them, though. I mean, unless you want, yes, you can determine it how you want, but with the specific way Michigan's played, with how they're shooting from three, this is one of those classic Beeline teams. They're 8th in the country in 3-point rate, so it will be curious to see how they play them. Hopefully, we'll record another podcast before then, but I guess we can't make any promises. MSU will have a week off going into that game. They go from Sunday against Rutgers at home to Michigan. So they'll
no midweek game next week.
No midweek game there.
It'll be interesting to see also if Tum Tum's back by that point, because
has there been any update on him? Because last I'd heard, they have absolutely no clue.
Nope, that's still the word is it could be another week. It could be the rest of the season. Even is what the word was. So that'll be really interesting to see how that plays out for Tum Tum, just because it would be pretty disappointing if he was unable to play for the rest of the season, given that he only played probably a little less than half of the year.
How do you think?
Go ahead.
How do you think McQuaid has looked as the kind of de facto backup point guard? He still looks very uncomfortable in that role to me, because he's a shooting guard. He's not really a point guard. I know they've had Aaron Harris do a little bit of it more. I think he's a little bit maybe better suited for that role than McQuaid has looked. I don't know. What have you thought?
Yeah, to me the most glaring issue with McQuaid is that he doesn't totally understand when to assert himself and when to sort of fade into the background. It seems like McQuaid is either standing in the corner and passing the ball to a guy in the post, or back to the top of the key, or he's taking somewhat wild drives through the lane and taking sort of out of control layup attempts.
Yeah, he's a true freshman in his first year. Right. He's growing, and he's got.
And getting a feel for the game when you're playing out of position in a case like that is difficult, right?
It kind of reminds me of Keith Appling when he had to move to point guard after Corey Lucius got dismissed. He kind of that first year they had Kalen Lucas, but sometimes they would have Appling run the point, and he kind of was a little bit uncomfortable in that role, and it just takes time.
Yeah, and the good news is I do think that McQuaid has what we saw out of McQuaid early in the season was sort of the game feel in scenarios where you can understand why Izzo feels like he can run the point at times. So it'll be interesting to see how he develops going forward, because that could be a useful skill. Now, got another point guard coming in next year in Cassius Winston, so hard to know if McQuaid will end up playing any point guard really after this season. That might be something that we look back on and go, boy, that was kind of a funky thing that happened while Tum Tum was the only point guard on the roster. So that'll be something interesting to watch going forward. But I think that McQuaid's been generally a pleasant surprise this year. I didn't even think that based on his recruiting profile that he'd be much more than sort of what Arns has been giving this team, which is sort of spot minutes at times. So he's not a point guard, and you can tell that, but that's okay. He'll get better at that. And having Valentine on the team, like as a guy who can sort of run the point, has been a real luxury at this point. So,
an update on foul. Looks like the current in the Louisville Virginia Tech game currently going on. I don't think it's over. 51 fouls, 66 free throws in this game so far. That's
Wow.
ugly. But okay, last note on basketball before we move into a little bit of football. The lime green jerseys. What'd you think?
They were bad. Now they actually probably weren't quite as bad as I thought they might be in person.
But are you saying that after they won the game in them?
I mean, that probably has some effect on my my feelings about them in general. I mean, what I'll say is at least they're green. You know, like if you're gonna go with a weird alternate uniform, at least the color was one of the only colors. So, you know, I appreciated the fact that they were actually green. But
Yeah.
the other, you know, it was funky that they had the whole Izzone in that color as well.
Yeah,
It must have been hard to watch on television.
yeah, you know, I do appreciate that it was green instead of the bronze. I still think the bronze that they wore against Georgetown was the worst. But
I agree.
I didn't like him. The lime greens just if it was like for some, you know, disease awareness that you get a lot of these
For Lyme disease awareness.
something like that. I think it would have accepted it more, but like no, I think the fact that they did give the shirts out to everybody in the lower bowl helped. So therefore, MSU wearing these green didn't stand out as much. It was a whole heck of a lot of green. I think that did a little help a little bit watching it on TV, but just you know who had awesome jerseys was Maryland in that game. Maryland's jerseys in that game were very cool, and when the Under Armour jersey is looking way better than the Nike jersey, I think he did something wrong. It felt very Adidas-y to me to do something like that. It felt like Michigan wearing the straight all yellows or the Zubaz or the sleeves that Adidas does. It felt like an Adidas move. I don't think a Nike school needed to be doing something like that. Not to mention, MSU already has an alternate home jersey, and it's like
Which is
one
awesome.
of the best jerseys in college basketball. Right when they announced those lime green jerseys, they were on sale in the team shop. They still do not sell the Script State. I have no idea why. They wear it plenty. They've worn it for 2 NCAA tournaments in a row now. This is you know, this isn't a new thing. They got those lime green jerseys up and ready to go right off the bat, but they still don't sell the Script States. I have no idea why. Because those
Yeah, I agree. I think people would buy them
would,
like crazy.
Right, those would sell like hotcakes because they are very good looking. And MSU keeps wearing them. It's not like it was a one-time deal. They keep wearing them. So why are you not selling them? Is it because it's not the Spartans branding that they do? I don't know, but it just felt like if it, you know, the neon green, it felt like a little money grab. But you know, if you're gonna do a money grab, why not just sell the jerseys that people want to buy? That was the confusing part to me. I did a poll after they came out, a quick poll on Twitter, 200 responses. I think 80% said they didn't like them, and a lot of people afterwards said, oh, you know, maybe they're not as bad after they win the game, because as long as you win the game, they look a lot better. But just no. And from what I thought I read, they're not going to wear them again, which is good. Just don't.
Yeah, I agree. You and I are both uniform purists, and because of that, you know, we tend to agree on these things. You know, if you're gonna go with weird alternate uniforms, at least these were the right color. You know, one of the funny things is MSU's worn a number of shades of green over, you know, the last
20
100 years.
Back in the 90s, like every team had a different shade of green.
Right, or Kelly Green in the 80s, like football team in the 80s, right? So it seemed like what they did was they went, huh, what shade of green hasn't MSU ever worn? And then picked that one to put on the team. But yeah, I mean, in terms of alternates, I think that they were better than the alternates they wore in 2012-13, I think against Indiana, the ones that had like a big Spartan helmet on the front and a number.
Oh yeah, the green with the bronze logo on there.
I thought those were bad too. I don't know. Like,
yeah, I didn't like.
It's hard to do alternate uniforms well, and I think that they figured it out. And I don't know why they.
Everybody likes a throwback. Like one thing Adidas does well is throwbacks. Like you unless you're like, you know, those Philadelphia Eagles light blue and yellow jerseys that look like Michigan. Generally, it's hard to get a throwback wrong. And I think MSU Script State is, you got like a 90% approval rating on those. Those things would sell. I don't know why they don't sell them when they've worn them for 3 years at least now. So I don't know. All right. Anything else you want to hit on basketball?
No, I think we got it all.
All right. So as we transition to football here and the seemingly never-ending topic of Connor Cook. We have talked about this a number of times. I don't think our opinions have changed, but I do think it bears repeating. So Cook is not at the Senior Bowl. It had originally been reported he wasn't going to be there likely because of his shoulder. He was not announced as an injury exit, though. They announced it as he just chose not to be there. My guess is that his shoulder is still not good because it hasn't been, and we know it hasn't been. And so whatever, that's that. Then Tony Pauline from one of the NFL draft sites, I don't remember the name, tweeted that word at the Senior Bowl is that Michigan State teammates were less than effusive in their praise for Connor Cook, which right off the bat, this is like a second or third hand alleged idea. Once again, this is not someone saying something. This is, you hear this, you hear that. Like all the criticism of Cook is so passive aggressive. Like if you think he's a dick, say he's a dick, you know? I don't understand this like trying to, dance around actually saying something because, he hasn't been arrested. There's plenty of things to criticize him on. His footwork isn't great. His accuracy his completion percentage isn't good. But nobody's talking about this. All they're talking about is, you maybe hear this, maybe that. He hasn't been arrested. There's been no high profile anything that happened other than the stupid Archie Griffin deal. But it just feels like, I forgot who it was, but someone on Twitter said it felt like teams are like kind of setting insurance for passing on him. Well, this is why I pay. This kind of having a reason to pass on him because I don't know if I've said before, I question if he's a true caliber NFL franchise quarterback. But then, just like say that criticism for things that are worth being criticized for. I don't understand what this talk is. Pauline said later that it wasn't about like hate or anything, but I don't know. Do you have is your opinion on this issue still the same?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my favorite is just the hate that comes from other Big Ten programs because...
Oh, you get into this all the time on the Only Callers Twitter account. I see this. You and 11 Warriors and some of the Michigan folks. Yeah. I know you guys have gone back and forth on this a couple times.
Yeah, and it's really easy to troll them because of the win in Columbus this year. So, I mean, that's the thing, though. I think ultimately the reason why people end up pouncing on weird rumor and innuendo like this is because they just have a general hate for a player. And the reason you hate a player is because they beat you. And I think that's basically what's happening to some degree, right? I mean, why do Michigan State fans hate Duke? There's no reason to hate them other than like the fact that MSU has lost to Duke in a number of high-profile games over the years, and in some cases embarrassingly so. So I think that's kind of ends up being what it boils down to. And then the other thing is, as Michigan State fans, we are a little, or I am at least, a little overly sensitive to that type of criticism because we just haven't had it before, right? I mean, when was the last time that somebody hated a Michigan State player football player at least, for being good in that way, right?
I've said before that MSU's kind of always been in that position of nobody really hates them. And that's part of the not getting national attention because not the true number one rival of anybody. So when
Right.
there is a target like Cook, maybe some MSU fans maybe don't know how to handle it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think that that's part of it as well.
But regardless of what fans or what other people say, I don't really care. It's just the same criticism of Cook, which is it just feels like everybody's going off of other things that they maybe heard from somebody. Like, where is this criticism of Cook's accuracy? Where is this criticism of his footwork? This is the stuff we should be talking about. He's got issues.
Or discussion of
yeah,
or his shoulder injury, right? I mean, that's a major issue.
That's it, right. The question, him not being in the Senior Bowl, it's not. Oh, he missed an opportunity to show himself. He's not showing leadership here. But how about, is his shoulder okay? If his shoulder's not okay, that's going to really hurt his draft stock. Like, that's the biggest thing going on with him right now, and nobody's talking about that. And I just don't understand why. It just feels like, every year you get this anonymous scout criticizes this player for some random thing deal. But this feels like that's all it is for Cook. Like,
yeah,
like
I agree.
Okay, if you think, I don't know, do they question is the idea that they question his dedication to football? Is that it? Is that it? Based on comments from MSU teammates, he doesn't. Based on him, playing through a shoulder injury multiple times in these games would tell you otherwise. But I'm not in on the program, so I can't answer that, fully. But like, what are they like? What are you trying to get out of it? Like, you think he's going to be Johnny Manziel? Is that the idea? Johnny Manziel had all sorts of problems when he was in school. Cook never had any of this. Cam Newton got arrested. Cam Newton got kicked out of school. Cam Newton was under NCAA investigation. He still went number one overall, because he had the physical abilities. That's what this comes down to. And no one's talking about Cook's physical abilities for whatever reason. I just don't understand why this is the way things are going. And it's going to put a lot of attention on him at the combine, which by all accounts he'll be there. I assume, barring as long as his shoulder is okay. So these weird questions, he'll go through all of this at the combine. The idea of the Senior Bowl, he didn't need to go. AJ McCarron voluntarily didn't go a couple years ago. Cook's been a starter for 3 years. He's got all the tape in the world you could want, on him. He's going to be at the combine. He's going to be at the pro day. He's going to do workout for teams. Everything teams want to know about him, they'll get. There aren't questions about him, other than, is his shoulder okay? His footwork's not good. His accuracy is not good at times. You just kind of question, it's the shoulder. So I don't think him not being at the Senior Bowl is that big of a deal, especially if his shoulder's not 100%, in which case he goes out there and works out and maybe hurts his stock a little bit because he's playing injured. So I don't see any problem with what he's done. He'll have to answer a lot of these questions at the combine. The combine will be very important for him, especially with the way things are going. But I've just been so confused at this process with him.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
So, here we go talking about it again. And that's just what it is. It's a thing to talk about, and it just builds on itself. So we're going to finish up this podcast with a little bit of recruiting, since as of recording, we're a week away from signing day. MSU currently has 6 players already enrolled, including 2 big wide receivers in Donnie Corley and Cameron Chambers, who are expected to be a big part of the offense next year. Quarterback Masai DeWeaver also enrolled. But there's also 14 commitments on the board. I think MSU's still looking for a few more in the mix for some guys. They just got a commit from 3-star offensive lineman Luke Campbell out of Ohio. Joe, I know you've been busy the last couple of weeks, but with the state of MSU's class, currently ranked MSU's recruiting this class for MSU has kind of gone under the radar a bit, with Ohio State being number 1, Harbaugh doing all his shenanigans. MSU sitting right there with a top 15 class. It's been top 10. your thoughts on this MSU class right now, and finishing it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think what was interesting was how many guys ended up committing over the summer, last summer. There was a really large number of guys, and then there's a little strangeness over the past couple months with the parting of ways between a couple guys and who were commits at one point, and some decommits, or a decommit, I think, with the 2017 Hunter Rison decommitting. But yeah, so MSU's still definitely in the hunt with a couple guys. The big one's Lavert Hill, who's going to announce on signing day that he's been sort of in the mix for MSU for a long time. There's a need at running back, it seems like to me, in this class.
Yeah,
they went filled.
Yeah, I know they went hard after one of the top running backs who was committed to Penn State, but it looked like he opted to stick with Penn State. So yeah, there's no running back in this class right now.
Yep. So that'll be interesting, but yeah, I mean, it's an exciting class. If you're bullish on D'Antonio's ability to develop players, and I think there's a lot of good reason to be, then there's a lot of reason to be excited about this class. The defensive line commits are really exciting, including Josh King, who's the top recruit in Illinois, Naquan Jones, who's the second best recruit from Illinois, who's a defensive tackle. Josh King's a defensive end. One of the top guys out of Indiana, Austin Robertson's a defensive end. So yeah, a lot of reason to be excited for this class, and we'll have a lot of coverage on signing day at the Only Colors. So yeah, hopefully, the class right now is at about 20 guys. With Conklin going pro early, I think that there's probably a spot or two remaining available. Doing that math from a football perspective is always hard. It's so much easier on the basketball side because there's a limited number of scholarships. So yeah, but keep an eye out for welcome aboards. And the newest commit, Luke Campbell, actually had some of the most fun high school highlight film that I've seen out of a recruit, just because he's a little bit of a small town guy. He's from sort of a northern suburb of Columbus, but he's like an incredibly nasty offensive lineman and would just take guys to the ground, like who are completely out of the play, like at the very end of plays. And I'm pretty excited to see him play for MSU, because I think he's going to be a little bit obnoxious to opponents. So I would definitely check out in our welcome aboard post. We had some video of him, and I think it's worth watching.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me when Conklin declared, I went back and looked at the welcome aboard post I wrote for him, and he was playing. He was a 0-star, wasn't even rated because he was in such a small area and not many talented players there. And so he, compared to everybody else, he looked like he was a tall guy, just wrecking people, and obviously he filled out and that worked out. So it was kind of funny. Something else regarding MSU class rating. A couple less than 2 weeks ago, the SB Nation recruiting account tweeted out that at the time, OSU and Michigan, Ohio State and Michigan had 28 4- or 5-star players, and the rest of the Big Ten had 32. And my first reaction was, well, the case is every year. They're always like that. And then I took a look at the numbers. Based on 24/7, Michigan had 14 4-stars, while MSU had 10 and Penn State had 9. There's not much of any difference there. There's not really much of a difference there. They're all top 15 classes between the four of them. And someone had made the point, it should say that, Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State have like 40-something 4- or 5-star players, and the rest of the Big Ten has something like single digits. It's really it's not a big too little 12, 10, whatever we're at deal. It's really more of a big 4, recruiting wise at least, and that's the way it's kind of been. So you got these 4 teams battling it out, and just because Michigan, Ohio State get good players doesn't mean the other guys won't. And that we obviously know what MSU does, or what D'Antonio has done with players. So MSU fans have always been quick to drop the or recruit rankings don't matter deal, and that's not true. I think recruiting rankings increase your chances of being successful, and when you take that, when you improve those chances at MSU with what MSU's done with player development, I think you have to be very excited about what MSU's bringing in this class. Probably one of their highest rated classes. It's definitely their highest rated ever since the rankings kind of started in 2003. But in the modern era after Madness, is one of the most talented classes they've had. So yeah, check out theonlycolors.com next Wednesday. I imagine, like normal, you guys will have stuff up throughout the day as the letters come in, as MSU announces those. And if you want to know who they got now, check out the welcome aboard posts on the site. Kind of a breakdown of who MSU's got. So last thing here, with regards to recruiting. Jim Harbaugh had drawn some, headlines for being quirky, for sleeping over at a kid's house, climbing a tree, which I didn't think that was a big deal. I don't care. But the sleeping over thing was a little weird to me. But Jim Harbaugh is kind of a weird dude. Coaches do what they gotta do. You got Nick Saban out here doing the wobble, so whatever, they're gonna do that. But now Harbaugh's in the news for bad things, and recruit Eric Swenson, the offensive lineman, says that he had out of the blue, Michigan pulls his scholarship. On the Michigan side, there were reports that he kind of knew this was coming. He refused to camp, and whatever. Another guy committed. His offer was pulled essentially, and they've lost something like 8 or 9 decommits in the past. I think in the cycle or in the last few months, and not a good look. I don't think it's really going to hurt them at all, but just not really a good look. I think pulling scholarships happens. Everybody does that. So it's unfortunate, but it happens. I think the timing of things with the number of decommits Michigan is having this close to signing day is difficult because a lot of those kids, if they want to go somewhere else, they lose their slots. If a guy decommits in December, he's got plenty of time to find a new spot. So did you have any thoughts on, as this has been going on in the past month or week, Joe, have you had any hot takes on all of it?
So ultimately, no. I think the interesting thing about recruiting is just that there's such a weird rumor mill that starts up with all these things, right? I mean, and the sleeping over thing by Harbaugh is just weird. And I think, ultimately, I think that in the football community that there's a recognition of sort of folks who are doing things the right way in some sense. It would be ridiculous to think of Mark D'Antonio doing something like that, and I like it that way. And so I don't think it's because D'Antonio doesn't have the fire or the desire to do that type of recruiting. I think it's that he respects people's personal space. But so I don't know. But if that's going to be Jim Harbaugh's style, I mean, go for it. Now, when it comes to like the decommits and the number of guys who have had their offers pulled and stuff like that so close to signing day, I mean, it's really hard to know exactly what was said or the way that what type of offer was on the table, stuff like that, and the universities can't comment on those things specifically, and so the whole it becomes just this giant mess, and it's sort of impossible to know what's going on there. There was this moment a couple years ago during the Malik McDowell recruitment where I found myself texting with a friend of mine about Malik McDowell's relationship with his mother, and I went, oh man, this is I just had like a moment of clarity there where I was like, this is incredibly inappropriate. Like, there's no way that this is made a weird string of decisions in my life to come to this point, right? So, in some sense, I try to stay out of those rumor mills to some degree, and I think that if it's true that guys are getting their offers pulled late in the game, or Harbaugh's not being clear about his intentions with players, that he's going to develop a reputation for that, and there will be probably negative consequences somewhere along the line. So
I don't know. I mean, I don't think they'll get much. Who are the schools who have been criticized for doing this or for oversigning or whatever, or gray shirting, or it's the SEC schools. But they still bring in the best. They still bring in the best players every year. I think each year you've got a different batch of players, different batch of parents, and I don't think it carries over as much as one might think it would. Especially if Harbaugh keeps winning, I don't think players will care. The biggest thing for me, you were talking about people caring about recruiting and whatnot. I think a difference, how is this different than a kid decommitting? Well, if a kid decommits, the coach still has a lot of options. The coach also makes a lot of money. The kid doesn't have – the recruiting process is almost the only time when kids have any sort of leverage. So it's not equal. It's not an equal situation there. And getting into the semantics of whether or not offers were pulled, whether or not Michigan had communication, I think it's very clear that Harbaugh is going to do whatever he can to bring in the best players, and that's what most of the top programs in the country do. And I just think, and if Michigan fans say we want to win, we're okay with it, that's fine, own it. I had so many Michigan fans flooding my mentions with excuses or whatever, or bringing MSU into things that had nothing to do with MSU. It's like, if just like own it. If that's if you want to win and do whatever, that's fine. I thought Brian Cook wrote a very good piece at MGO blog, and dropping kids for better players, or dropping kids whose maybe academics aren't great, it happens. It's fine. It's the week before signing day, 2 weeks before signing day stuff that just kind of feels icky about it. But if that's what if that's how things are gonna if that's how things are gonna go, just just from a fan standpoint, just own it and do it. I think trying to wiggle around it or make up excuses for whatever. It's kind of how things go now. It's how a lot of programs do it. Tennessee's been criticized for doing that a lot. Louisville, Alabama with the oversigning. Tennessee's bringing in 30 players a year for like 3 or 4 straight years. So it's like this is not nothing new. It's kind of how a lot of the top programs roll now, and that's how things are going to be. So I think the fact that yeah, I guess that's my only thoughts on that.
Yeah. Recruiting is a gross thing in all.
Yeah,
some ways, right?
I'm not.
I'm not getting around it.
Yeah, when I was in high school, I was like real into the recruiting thing, and as I've gotten older, and I just don't care anymore. Yeah, I think from the MSU side of things, I think it's easier for MSU fans to not care because they believe that D'Antonio will make the best out of whatever he has. So, as opposed to you look at a place like Penn State that's constantly bringing in top classes but struggling on the field. So it's all about identifying talent and developing that talent. And MSU has done that. Jim Harbaugh has done that. And so it's going to be these recruiting battles in the Big Ten East are certainly going to be fierce, continue to be fierce. And so things are going good in the Big Ten. So, all right, we've been here for a while, but I know it had been a while since we did one of these podcasts, and we had a lot of things to hit on. So next time we do this, it may be after signing day. I guess we'll see. I don't know if we'd want to even record this next Tuesday because of signing day the next day. So I guess a TBA for right now on when the next one is. Joe, is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we hit everything and then some. Thanks to all of our listeners who stuck around for the whole pod.
Thanks for sticking with us. I hope you guys like it. We like doing this. We try to get together whenever we have the opportunity to. So you can follow me on Twitter at Chris Vanini. He's at JOBIN #2 as well as at The Only Colors, where he will get in Twitter fights with blogs of other Big Ten teams. So you can check that out. And as always, check out things on at theonlycolors.com, especially with signing day next week. So thanks guys for listening, and we'll talk to you guys soon. See you.
See ya.